Number 5 on this list is war. So this one's pretty general, but the Bible definitely touched on it quite a bit, so it feels fair to include it. Now, war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, "Now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come, for the accuser of our brothers has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. And they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they loved not their lives even until death." Whew! What a mouthful, guys, but that is just one passage discussing war, but frankly, there are just so many of them. Sometimes they talk about specific wars being fought between certain groups, but a lot of the time it's just war in general. Sometimes it even discusses how God will be with you when you go to war, which is actually kind of an incentive to fight. This book and what it preaches has been the catalyst for so many battles in human history, and it's not unreasonable to think that it's going to happen again. I certainly hope that there is no more major wars in human history, and this predict isn't right, but I'm not going to be holding my breath. Number 4 on this list is the 7 bowls. Then I heard a loud voice from the temple telling the 7 angels, "Go and pour out onto earth the 7 bowls of the wrath of God." So the first angel went and poured out his bowl on the earth, and harmful and painful sores came upon the people who bore the mark of the beast and worshipped its image. The second angel poured out his bowl into the sea, and it became like the blood of a corpse, and every living thing died that was in the sea. The third angel poured out his bowl into the rivers and the springs of water, and they became blood. And I heard the angel in charge of the waters say, "Just are you, O Holy One, who is and who was, for you brought these judgments." That's a passage from the Bible, and those are only 3 of the bowls. There are literally 4 more of these things that get even worse. The 4th one causes the sun to burn people. The 5th one covers the world in darkness and has people bite their tongues off. The 6th one dries up a massive river, and the 7th one causes huge earthquakes. So not really the best of times if you ask me. Now let's be real, folks. Are all of these things going to happen all at once? Probably not. But some of it definitely could. Is there a reality where I see all of the fish in the oceans getting poisoned by something and then ultimately destroying the worldwide ecosystem? Potentially. Could I see a massive earthquake ravaging parts of the world and causing a horrible chain reaction killing millions? Yeah, I mean, it could happen. All of these bowls are pretty horrible, and we just have to hope that none of these things happen to us now, because the ramifications, they'd be pretty catastrophic. Number 3 on this list is the persecution of Christians. Religion, although it can do great good, has also caused horrible evil. Throughout history, we can see that religion is basically the leading cause for humans to start fighting each other. What someone believes and the rules to which they govern their life is really important to us humans, and Christianity is no different. The Bible has talked a bunch about the persecution of Christians before. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed, always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may be manifested in our bodies. For we who live are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that the life of Jesus also may be manifested in our mortal flesh. So death is at work in us, but life in you. That's just one of the passages in the Bible talking about it, but we also have some other ones that are just straight to the point, reading, "Indeed, all who desire to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted." Now, Christians being persecuted is nothing new. This is a prediction that's actually already come to fruition many times over. Like I said before, religion has started many wars in the past, and the persecution of Christians has certainly been a reason for a couple of them. It's possible that this isn't actually done though. I'd like to believe that the world is getting to a place where one can believe what they choose to believe, and that's fine for them, but the fact of the matter is we just simply aren't there yet. There has always been and continues to be the persecution of not just Christians, but tons of groups groups with all different beliefs. It's sad to say, but this might not be over yet, and this prediction may continue to be proven correct. Number 2 on this list is famine. For probably most of the people watching this video, famine, or the thought of going hungry, most likely isn't that close to you. However, there are still millions of people in the world that suffer greatly from famine and die from it all the time. There will be great earthquakes and in various places famine and pestilences, and there will be terrors and great signs from heaven. Famine is mentioned a lot in the Bible, and I think it was probably a sign of the times. We have to remember that when the Bible was written, the world was not nearly as advanced as it is today. Food and water, basic resources for survival, were not a given by any means, but something that people had to fight for on the daily. If you had these resources in abundance, then that was considered a luxury and you were probably really wealthy. Even though we don't live in those times anymore, and now for a lot of people, water is at your nearest tap and food at your nearest supermarket, famine is still a real thing. It should also be noted that we should never take food for granted. Some experts are predicting that if global warming continues at the drastic rate that it's going, food will become far harder to grow and get a lot scarcer. Fingers crossed we can prevent this from happening and keep everybody well fed in the future. And finally, number 1 on this list is an asteroid. Listen to this passage from the Bible and tell me this isn't just a tad bit concerning. The first angel blew his trumpet, and there followed hail and fire mixed with blood, and these were thrown upon the earth. And 1/3 of the earth was burned up, and 1/3 of the trees were burned up, and all green grass was burned up. The second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and 1/3 of the sea became blood. 1/3 of the living creatures in the sea died, and 1/3 of the ships were destroyed. The third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star fell from heaven, blazing like a torch, and it fell on 1/3 of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. 1/3 of the waters became wormwood, and many people died from the water because it had been made bitter. So I don't know about you guys, but the prospect of getting hit with 3 separate asteroids really doesn't sound like a great time to me. The way that they describe it may be a bit tame too, to be honest. If we're gonna get hit with 3 separate things from space, then it's very likely that more than 1/3 of the trees are gonna burn up. In fact, it would probably be the end of the world as we know it. I've done a lot of research on the possibility of an asteroid coming and crashing into the Earth, and it's a real concern. Luckily, scientists don't predict anything in the near future, but that doesn't mean that it still won't happen. In fact, statistically speaking, eventually it will happen. Whether we're ready for this impact or are capable of defending ourselves from it, that's another question entirely. Number 5 on this list is destruction from aliens. For centuries, humans have thrown around the idea of intelligent life coming down to Earth. We've speculated on how they would get here, what these aliens might look like, and how they would communicate with us. Hollywood has actually made an incredible amount of money exploiting this idea, with some of the biggest blockbuster movies ever made revolving around the premise of aliens. Now, although we truly have no idea how these aliens would react if they were to come down to Earth, typically we tend to believe that they would be aggressors and intend to conquer our planet or study us in some pretty graphic ways. So why might this come true in 2022, and what exactly could we expect if they did appear? Well, the reason that I think this might come true in 2022 is that every year that passes by, the likelihood of aliens coming to Earth increases in my mind. Never have we had more of a presence in the universe than right now, and that will only continue to grow. In what previous years have we been able to say that multiple billionaires are attempting to go into space? Is it possible that this newfound presence in space is enough to make another intelligent life form aware of our presence in the universe? I honestly think it might be. Now, if aliens were to come to Earth, I don't believe that we can automatically say they would be evil towards us. I think it's pretty egotistical of us humans to think that another intelligent life form would be inherently less moral than us. For instance, most of us wouldn't walk past a species that we're unfamiliar with on the street and just kill it. That being said, there's always the possibility that galactic domination is the overarching goal of these aliens, and if that's the case, the human race is probably toast. Although, assuming that they are nice and don't intend to harm us, I still don't think that we're out of the woods. If aliens were to come to planet Earth, then we have to think, where did they come from?
Back in the day when Europeans were settling in America, they brought with them some European diseases. Diseases that their immune systems were accustomed to, but those in America weren't. If aliens came to Earth, then they might bring diseases or viruses that are from a completely different planet that nobody on Earth has ever experienced. Our immunities would stand absolutely no chance at all if this was the case, and it would sweep through us. Either way, friend or foe, the arrival of aliens would bring a plethora of complications to Earth. So let's cross our fingers and hope that they keep their distance, at least for now. Number 4 on this list is robot bosses. Now, I know that the term robot bosses sounds a little bit ridiculous, but you gotta hear me out on this one. People have been theorizing for decades now that artificial intelligence will take the jobs that are currently filled by humans. And to be completely honest, this isn't actually much of a theory anymore, but it's actually fact. Forbes estimates that over 60 million jobs that have been lost in the United States have been due to artificial intelligence and the application of robots in the workplace. The one-time investment of getting a factory automated or having a robot do a job is way cheaper than paying a human to do it long-term. Also, robots are not susceptible to human error, and if they ever break down, they require a simple fix before they're back to running smoothly again. Now, there's definitely a big leap from putting a car together and managing a business. Being the boss of an office job, for instance, requires regularly meeting with your workers, organizing things with people outside of the office, and a bunch of other tasks that are currently not suited for a robot. However, having a robot do this isn't as far away as some may think. Toby Walsh, an artificial intelligence scientist, writes, "We already trust them to match us with a spouse, and that's one of the most important decisions we ever make. Indeed, there is an argument that matching people with jobs is an easier program than matching people with each other." And he's a really strong point. If I'm about to trust a robot to pick my literal life partner for me, then why wouldn't I trust it to manage my business? If the AI becomes smart and cheap enough that it makes sense, then we will see a massive shift in companies. My mental health would personally be so horrible if I had to report my progress to a robot every day. I think I would get seriously depressed. Not to mention all of the other millions of jobs that would get lost to robot bosses. In my opinion, this is one of the realest and scariest entries on this list. Number 3 on this list is the revitalization of the Titanoboa. The Titanoboa is believed to be the largest snake to ever exist on the planet. BBC writes that it was 14 meters long, weighed more than a ton, and could swallow a crocodile in one go. 14 meters long is absolutely insane when you think about it, and considering this thing could swallow one of the most dangerous animals on the planet in one go, it was definitely a beast. Now, having this thing come back to life next year, I mean, that's a bit of a stretch, but the beginning processes of that, they aren't totally ridiculous. Creatures of this size, especially reptiles, they require warmer climates to survive. As we talked extensively about in the first part of the scary predictions that might come true in 2022, climate change is a big problem. The global climate is reaching places that us humans have never seen before. Scientists believe that if this continues, then creatures like the Titanoboa will have the environment needed to make their comeback on the Earth. Now, once again, this is not going to happen right away, and it probably won't even be exactly Titanoboa either. However, another creature like Titanoboa could start to evolve with the rising temperatures, and before we know it, snakes like that one back in the day, they could be a reality. Number 2 on this list is the Second Cold War. The First Cold War was an extremely dark time in human history. Even though it didn't cause nearly as much death and destruction as the world wars that preceded it, tensions were high around the world, and the threat of a massive nuclear fallout was on everyone's mind. Where people could travel in the world was extremely limited, with part of the world being closed off. A second Cold War could be brewing right now, and a similar style of living may be on the horizon if things don't shift soon. The Cold War that I'm speaking about right now may be between the United States and China. For some time now, people have been projecting China to pass the United States for overall economy and global influence, with many people believing that to happen very soon. In fact, I did a video on one of our sister channels, Life's Biggest Questions, answering the question, what if China took over the world? Well, everything I talked about in that video is happening right now, and the United States aren't too pleased about it. In fact, right now China is pouring boatloads of money into Barbados to help boost their infrastructure. This seems like a really nice thing to do on the surface, however, many experts believe that they're doing this to gain influence in the region. The US has also noticed this, and once again, they aren't too pleased about it. Tensions between these two superpowers have been brewing for decades, and I for one wouldn't be shocked if next year we entered into a second Cold War as both nations attempt to be the biggest global power. If this happened, then this could be a really scary time and truly change everyone's style of living as we know it today. Number 1 on this list is antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Bacteria is everywhere. Tiny little living microbes that for the most part happily go on their way. Some of these microbes though are extremely harmful to humans and cause some bad diseases. Our best defense against these types of microbes are antibiotics. Antibiotics are exactly as their name would describe, antibiotics, so anti-life. They're used to stop the growth of bacteria and effectively kill them. Since about the 1940s, we've been using antibiotics and they've saved millions of lives. The problem is that these tiny little microbes are getting smarter, and our antibiotics, they aren't working like they used to. Basically, what's happening here is that the germs that we're fighting with our antibiotics are learning how to fight back. It's as if you're a football team and you ran the same play over and over and over again. Well, eventually the team that you're running that play on will realize what you're doing and stop it from working. The same thing is happening here with these bacteria, and this is a big problem. If these bacteria get too resistant to our antibiotics, then they will stop working altogether, and the diseases that we've had under control for decades will once again run rampant. This is happening right now and will continue to happen in 2022. Experts say that if we don't figure out a way to stop this or develop a different way of killing off these bacteria, then this will result in millions of deaths worldwide. It would basically be an entire new wave of pandemic with multiple diseases. I personally do not need to be entering into another pandemic after what we just went through, so fingers crossed, science can figure this one out. Number 5 on this list is the continued damaging effects of climate change. That's right guys, we're going there. In 2021, temperatures in North America had some record-setting numbers. Over the last few years, temperatures have been rising significantly, and 2021 was no different. The west coast of Canada and the United States were the hottest that they've ever been this past year in 2021, and we saw what rising temperatures can cause. Forest fires raged in British Columbia and in California, and with the temperatures continuing to rise, this will only get worse and worse. Something concerning as well is that the nighttime temperature was hotter than it's ever been. Typically, it's very hot in the day and then gets pretty cool in the nighttime. This allows our bodies to cool off when we sleep. However, in 2021, the temperature during the night didn't drop nearly as drastically as it usually does, and this is because the Earth is holding on to that heat in the atmosphere and it's having a hard time escaping. With all of this being said, and the fact that no real dramatic change has been made to our greenhouse gas emissions, scientists predict that this trend will continue in 2022. They've come out and said that between 2021 and 2025, there is a 90% chance that we will have the warmest global year ever. They also predict that there is a 40% chance that in that same time frame, we will reach 1.5 degrees Celsius higher than what our global temperature was at pre-industrial days. All of this heat also means that they're predicting a lot more tropical storms as well. The frequency of cyclones in the Atlantic area is supposed to rise. Forest fires, as I mentioned earlier, will continue to rage and be harder to suppress, and southwestern North America is likely to be a lot drier than it's ever been. Basically, scientists believe that 2022 will continue to break climate change records and be pretty detrimental to the Earth. Number 4 on this list is a prediction from Baba Vanga. This one is pretty bloody triggering, and I can only hope that she's wrong about it. Baba Vanga thinks that in 2022 there will be a deadly virus that is released from a glacier and that will ravage the world. Now, if you don't know who Baba Vanga is, then she was a woman who lost her eyes at a very young age, but then developed the ability to have visions. She's also made a lot of correct predictions over the years, with people saying that she has an 85% success rate. Brexit, the Syrian gas attacks, the first United States black president, all of this stuff was predicted by Baba Vanga. In 2022, she is saying that a glacier will melt due to global warming, and that in that ice will be a virus that will get released into the world, and our human immune systems won't be ready for it. After COVID, I cannot handle any more viruses or diseases or anything like that at all. The sad thing is though, that this could very well actually happen. We already spoke about global warming and how it is continuing to rise, with 2022 having the potential to be the hottest year ever. This is obviously causing the glaciers on the poles to melt. Now the whole aspect of having a virus released because of this kind of sounds like it was taken straight out of a sci-fi movie, but it's actually accurate. Scientists have found viruses in the ice before, and after testing them, have realized that they are nothing like what we've ever seen. Therefore, our bodies would not be capable of fending off these viruses because they have never encountered anything that's similar to them. Some of these viruses may not even affect humans either, but they could affect animals or plants. This could be just as detrimental though, as it has the potential to absolutely annihilate the ecosystem. Either way guys, we just have to cross our fingers and hope that any viruses found in the ice aren't too dangerous, and we just dodge this bullet altogether. Number 3 on this list is another catastrophic economic recession. Yep guys, it's time to talk money, or well, I guess in this instance it would be the lack of money. After the massive economic recession that took place a little over a decade ago, everyone is still on high alert, doing their best to make certain that we don't fall into that trap ever again. This is easier said than done though, because there are often extenuating circumstances that are out of our control. For instance, COVID. That really hurt the economy and nobody saw that coming. Stuff like that is kind of impossible to predict. However, that doesn't stop people from trying to look ahead and see what the next economic year will hold for us. Right now, a positive economic recovery is seen as very likely due to many people believing that 2022 is supposed to be the first normal year back after the pandemic. People will have savings that they want to spend, they go out, they spend them, bang, the economy loves it. But experts believe that this level of economic optimism has reached an unstable place. The stock market is predicting such a big boom, and the experts don't think that the money will actually hold up to what they're predicting. It should also be noted that the percentage chance of an economic recession has been slowly rising over the last few months. Right now, it's believed that in July of next year, there will be just under a 10% chance that the entire United States economy goes into a major recession. A 1 in 10 chance, it's not horrible, but when you're playing with people's life savings and their jobs, that gets a lot scarier very quickly. Economic optimism can be a good thing, but overconfidence can bring us to a very scary place, as seen by the housing market collapse of 2007. Number 2 on this list is a prediction by Nostradamus. Now would this really be a 2022 predictions list video if we didn't have Nostradamus in it? He's basically a staple whenever it comes to scary predictions. This time, he believes that a major climate war will start in 2022. For those of you who aren't familiar with Nostradamus, he was a French astrologer and seer in the 1500s. Now we still talk about him today though, due to his major work called The Prophecies. The Prophecies is a collection of poetic quatrains that predict things to come in the world. Nostradamus has been proved correct with some of his prophecies such as the death of Henry II, the Great Fire of London, and the French Revolution. We actually talked a little bit about Nostradamus in a previous video looking at the top 5 mysterious people who tried to warn us about the apocalypse. In 2021, Nostradamus believed that zombies would take over the world. Pretty outlandish if you ask me, but the one that we're talking about today is a little bit more reasonable in my opinion. Nostradamus says, under the opposite Babylonian climate, great will be without the outpouring. As we've already spoken about, climate change will be greatly affecting our world. Could it be possible that a country has a shortage of resources due to this climate change and has to go to war? Potentially a lack of clean drinking water could cause some type of chaos between two nations? Maybe the world enacts new climate change laws that one country refuses to follow and therefore goes to war with some other nations. I'm not sure what it's gonna be, but all of these things, they could have potential. The one thing about Nostradamus is that he was never very specific with his predictions and often left it up for interpretation. But I do think that a war involving something climate-based is certainly a possibility and would be particularly horrible because war could only ever hurt the climate even more. Number 1 on this list is another prediction from Baba Vanga about a dragon taking over the world. That's right folks, clearly Baba Vanga was a very busy lady while she was alive and had multiple predictions for the year 2022. In this one, she believes that a dragon will take over the entire planet. In fact, she is quoted as saying, "A strong dragon will seize humanity. The 3 giants will unite, some people will have red money,
I see numbers 100, 5, and many zeros. So we have a lot going on here. We have dragons, giants, money that is red, and some strange numbers that kinda came out of nowhere. If we take what Baba Vanga said literally, then I can almost guarantee you that it won't come true. In my entire living life, I have never seen a dragon before, and as much as I would love to believe that they're real, I think it's safe to say that one is not going to appear next year and ravage the planet. That being said though, if we break down what she said a little bit more, then there could be some serious truth in what she's saying. Specialists of Baba Vanga believe that when she is referring to a dragon, she's actually talking about China. The giants that she's referring to, interpreters believe, are the three biggest countries in Asia: China, Russia, and India. Therefore, they will unite as a force, and the dragon, China, will take over the world. The money being read could be in reference to yuan, and the denominations of 100 or 5 could be referring to some important monetary number of those yuan that hasn't been made clear to us at this point. Now, if we take her meaning as I just described it, it actually doesn't sound nearly as outlandish as it did when we were talking about dragons. However, this would be pretty freaking bad, because I can only imagine that the giants uniting and the dragon taking over the world would mean a massive all-out war. If China, India, and Russia are involved, that also means that the use of nuclear weapons would probably take place, in which case 2022, it's really gonna be a lousy year, guys.